A common question I get is, where should I keep my cash? Where should I put my rainy day fund, my emergency fund? Where should I put that cash that I'm saving for this big purchase that I have next year? Where can I go to get a better rate of return than my current savings account? And in today's episode, we're going to talk about 3 locations that you can go to help get a better rate of return on your cash than where you might be at today.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast with Scott Searins, teaching you how to thrive in life, wealth, and retirement.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast, where we discuss thoughts, strategies, and actions to help you thrive in life, wealth, and retirement. I'm your host, Scott Searins. In today's episode, we're going to talk about your cash. Maybe you could call it your rainy day fund or your emergency fund, or your reserve, or maybe you're just saving up for a big purchase over the next 1, 2, or 3 years. For example, maybe a down payment on a new home. Either way, whatever your cash is sitting around for, today we're going to talk about that and how you could potentially, or ways to potentially get a higher rate of return on your cash. I know, a little bit of a different episode. We're not talking about your investments. We're not talking about your taxes. We're not talking about retirement income. We want to talk about that cash and help you get a little bit better of a return, potentially, if you can, in regards to that money that you've got sitting aside because, hey, it's necessary. We've got to have our cash there. It's a good portion of a healthy financial plan, but we also want to make sure that it's working for us. Now, I realize that we're not talking about some of the other things that are very typical, but if you're looking for help in regards to reducing your long-term tax picture or help in regards to building wealth, go and check us out at lifemoneyshow.com. Again, that's lifemoneyshow.com, where we've got a lot of additional content to help you in your financial future. Also, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. All right, before we get into the cash, I found an article that I was reading, and I thought it was very timely as we're talking about, interest rates going up. We continue to talk about the Federal Reserve. You might see that in the news. And the Fed, or the Federal Reserve, right? They are currently raising rates, or they're projected to raise rates. And when they raise rates, there's a couple things going on. One, that means that our interest rates on our savings accounts, CDs, etc., you'll see those start to go up. But that also means that mortgage rates, you're going to start to see an uptick in mortgage rates. And I know that, the housing industry has been very interesting in 2021. And I was reading this article, and I thought it would be just really timely, some good information to share. So that way, if you're out looking for a new home or looking for your first home, that this might be some helpful information to think about. Now, it says, as home prices reach a 34-year record, mortgage rates could be the final nail in the coffin for some home buyers. Now, why are they saying that? And this article's from gobankingrates.com. We'll link to it in the show notes so you can go read the full article. But some really interesting statistics here. The average home price in the United States rose 18.8% in 2021. That was according to the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price Index. Wow, that's a mouthful. So home prices are skyrocketing up. At the same time, Zillow recently projected that average U.S. home prices will increase another 14.3% in 2022. So if you thought that home prices got high in 2021, they're projecting, again, just a projection, but they're projecting home prices to continue to go up in 2022. At the same time, the average 30-year fixed-rate mortgage in the U.S. as of February 22nd was 4.12%. Now, where does that compare to previous rates? Well, according to the article here, it says that's up from the 3.78% at the beginning of February. So just in February alone, they're saying it went from 3.78 to 4.12. And at the end of 2021, so the end of last year, it was 3.27%. So mortgage rates are up almost 1 full percentage point. So how does this relate back to the title of the article? Well, if you're out looking for a home and you plan to get a mortgage, as the home prices continue to go up and as mortgage rates continue to go up, that means that your monthly mortgage payment, if you're trying to find a specific house and that the price of that house went up, your monthly mortgage payment's going to go up as well. So if you're out looking for a home, I just really want you to take this into account. Now, those rates, are those high rates? I tell you what, those rates, that 4.12% that I was mentioning, according to the article here, frankly, that's kind of pre-pandemic levels. I remember prior to refinancing my home, I was at about a 4% rate for a 30-year mortgage. I've since refinanced to a 15-year mortgage. However, those are pre-pandemic levels. So are they high? Well, right now, it might kind of feel that way. You might kind of feel like you missed out a little bit, but they're not necessarily high. They're not skyrocketed out of this world high. I mean, I've talked to some people that they remember when mortgage rates were 8% or even higher. So it's not unordinary. However, as the home prices continue to go up, it does make it, you have to be aware of where and what kind of home and what price range that you're now able to afford because mortgage rates went up, right? So that one tick, that 1 percentage point that mortgage rates have kind of gone up over the last year, what does that mean? Like, where could you actually afford? And so this is where it really, does impact people. So if you're living in a certain area, you needed a certain house, you needed a certain location, it could impact the type of home that you're able to afford. So here's some thoughts on this. Like I said, 4%, still a really good rate. Of course, it's as home prices go up, it makes it tougher to afford maybe what you were originally looking for. I will say, if you want to continue to get that house that you needed, maybe it's time then to build up a little bit more cash, and so that way you're able to make a bigger down payment. Now, the other thing I just want you to be really aware of is most people will get pre-approved for more than what they can afford. When you go and talk to the mortgage person, most people, and it's just not that they're doing anything wrong, but it's just part of the system, most people are going to get pre-approved for more than they can afford. So here's my last point to you in regards to all of this. Know your numbers. Really know and understand your numbers, meaning factor what this mortgage payment is going to be into your overall expenses. And don't forget to factor in your property taxes. Don't forget to factor in your homeowner's insurance. Don't forget to factor in your moving cost and the new furniture that you're going to need. And don't forget to factor in, if you're buying a home, you're going to be the one that's paying for all the repairs on that home, and because they don't stay perfect 100% of the time. I can tell you, I've had plenty of repairs on my home over a long period of time here. So don't forget to factor all of those things in and make sure whatever you're looking at, does that fit in to your overall budget? Does that fit into your overall plan? So something to be aware of. If you're out looking for a home, I get it. You've got to maybe make some fast decisions because home prices currently are on the rise, and same time the mortgage prices or mortgage rates are on the rise, which makes that home that may have cost $500,000 a year ago cost a lot more today if that home's not only $600,000, but the mortgage rates went up. Okay, let's move on from that. I thought it was kind of timely with everything we're seeing in the news in regards to housing, and just wanted to go over that. All right, so let's get into the heart of today's discussion, which is where should we keep our cash, right? So it is a part of a good, healthy financial plan. We're going to have some cash as part of that plan. I know it's not making us a whole lot. Interest rates are lower than maybe what we would have been used to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but as part of a good, healthy financial or retirement plan, we're going to have some cash on hand, right? We can call that our rainy day fund, or some people call it an emergency fund. I like to call it the reserve. Or maybe just you have a big ticket purchase coming up in the next 1, 2, or 3 years, like just as we're talking about home prices, maybe you're going to make a down payment on a home. And so this is money that we want to have safe, we want to have liquid, we want to be able to have easy access to it. So this isn't money that we're going to put into the market, because we know when we put money into the stock market, put money into investments, we're taking a risk for the potential return. This is money that we're keeping on the safer side of our overall plan. So where should we put it? Where can we go to at least have this money working for us a little bit? And there's an article that I was reading in CNBC, and it says, here's where to keep your cash amid high inflation rates. And as I read through the article, I thought it made a lot of good points. I thought it had a lot of good areas of where to put cash, some that I utilize myself. And so I thought it would be good to share with all of you in regards to some things that you may want to look at. So first off, cash, right? Well, we were talking about inflation earlier, and this is actually one of the positives of inflation, if you want to look at it that way, is that as the Federal Reserve raises rates, that also means interest rates are going to go up on like our savings and on CDs. Now, is it going to go up, or interest rates on savings accounts and money market accounts, is it going to go up at the same rate as inflation? Nope, definitely not. And you can take a look at all the accounts out there. They're definitely not going up at the same rate. However, as we mentioned, it's good to have cash on hand, and it's also important that all of your money, whether it's in the market or not in the market, you want to have it working for you versus having it work for somebody else. And so where can we go to get a good rate on this? Now, before I dive into the three areas, one of the things I wanted to talk to is just having the right amount of cash on hand. This is probably one of the number one questions I get is, Scott, how much cash should I be sitting on? Scott, am I sitting on too much cash? Scott, where should we go with our cash? And we'll talk about that. But first off, let's just talk about what's the right amount of cash to be sitting on. Good rule of thumb out there is 3 to 6 months of your expenses. Now, if you're like a business owner, if you're self-employed, if you're counting on your own activities to create your income, I would maybe move that up to 1 year just to kind of create a little extra safety net for you or you and your family. But if you're at a job where you feel really comfortable or have a resume that you know what, if something were to happen to you in your current job, you felt that you could get another job within 3 to 6 months, then I think a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it, is good. So just an example, so that way we're really clear here. If your monthly expenses are $5,000 a month, let's take that times 6 months. I would then suggest that you want to have $30,000 sitting in cash. And this is a cash pot, right, that you really don't want to touch. It's going to sit on the side, and it's for emergencies. It's not for, you needed a new Apple phone or new Apple Watch, or I needed to buy some clothes at the store. It's purely for just that. Emergencies in the event that something were to come up, the furnace were to break, the car were to break down, or in an unfortunate event that you were to lose your job. So emergencies, rainy day, right? That's why we want to have this cash there. What I find, though, is sometimes people can do a little bit too much. And here's the concerns with having too much cash. With inflation right now being around 7%, having too much cash, right? If you're 6 months, there's $30,000. I see where people have $100,000, $200,000 or more. Well, at 7% inflation and the really low interest rates that we're going to get on our cash, you're losing purchasing power. You're losing that ability to keep up with the price of goods going up. So we need to have that cash, but be careful on having too much cash. Now, there's a balance, right? Just because I gave you the rules of thumb, I realize in meeting with a lot of people that they just have a number in their mind. And whatever that number is, great. If that's what gives you peace of mind, that's what helps you sleep at night, go with that. But I really challenge you to review that each and every year, refresh that number, make sure it still makes sense. And if you've gone past your number, right, if your number was 100,000 and now you're at 200,000 sitting in cash, maybe it's time to review that and put the surplus to work for you and invest that surplus. So first off is just making sure that you have the right amount of cash sitting around. Invest the surplus. But let's go back, and today we're talking about the cash, and here's where we're going to go. So the article talked about 3 different spots that I agreed with, 3 good areas to put your cash to get maybe a better return than you might get in just a local savings or money market account. So where should we save it? Number 1, the first area that the article talked about was an online savings account. This is actually an account type that I use as well, as I use online savings accounts for my cash, for my emergency fund. And as I'll kind of quote out some different things from the article here, here's why. So it says the online savings accounts that are currently paying competitive yields are likely to be the ones that remain competitive as interest rates go up. This was said by Greg McBride, Chief Financial Analyst at Bankrate.com. Also, it pointed out in the article, many online savings accounts rates are currently around 0.5%, according to Bankrate.com. The rates offered by traditional brick and mortar banks are typically below the national average annual percentage yield of 0.05%. So these online savings accounts typically offer you a little bit higher rate on your savings dollars. These are banks that don't have a brick and mortar location, and that's why they're able to offer you a little bit higher of a rate. Now, the article also went through some really good advice on what to check for when it comes to these online savings accounts. One is make sure that you're working with a reputable financial institution. I get it, right? We go online, we get ads posted to us all over the place, and you don't know if something's a scam versus if it's real. So I would highly recommend just, is the name of the institution a reputable name, and is it a reputable institution? And the other really important part is make sure that they're providing FDIC coverage, which will protect you up to $250,000 in deposits. But these online savings accounts, I tell you what, they offer you a lot of flexibility. Sometimes there's no minimum balances, there's no restrictions on how long your money needs to stay there. I mean, I'll just give you, myself as the example. I've got an online savings account. What I've done is I've tied it or linked it to the checking account at my local brick and mortar bank, right? So now I've got my online savings account with an institution, and I've got my checking account with my local brick and mortar bank. And I can literally just set up transfers to go to the online savings account. And same thing, I can set up transfers to go back to my brick and mortar bank checking account. And all of this happens sometimes in the same day, sometimes overnight, but it happens pretty much instantaneously. And that's the other thing that you want to, take a look at when you're looking at these different online savings accounts, is that what is their, process for transferring funds in and out, and what's their timeline for that. The other thing that I've personally noticed is that my online savings account, their rates, just like the article said, their rates are going up as the Federal Reserve raises rates. They're not waiting. They don't hold back. They're actually in a competition for your cash, right? They want to get your cash over the next person with online that also offers online savings accounts. So they're in a competition for your cash. They're going to raise their rates typically way before the, local brick and mortar institution. So could be a good location for some of your cash in regards to, cash that you're saving up. It'll allow you a lot of different flexibility to look at that. Again, we're talking about cash here, right? We know that we're not going to make a fortune on it. It is part of a good, healthy financial plan, and it's important to have it around. Just think about this, right? So that online savings account, and I realize, again, this is not a fortune, but it's just the mentality of getting your money working better for you. Let's say you had that $30,000 emergency fund sitting in that online savings account that they were talking about in the example. That'd give you $150 of interest versus the typical brick and mortar one, which would give you $15 in interest. Again, not making a fortune. You have to determine, is that worth your time and effort? Depends on how much cash you have sitting aside, but might be pretty helpful for you. Take a look at it. All right, the second area that the article talks about. Now, I've kind of shied away from these based on, my age and time horizon, but it could be something to look at, and we want to talk about the pros and cons. The second area that you could put your cash would be in CDs, right? Certificates of deposit at a bank. Now, CDs will typically offer a higher interest rate, maybe even a higher interest rate than these online savings accounts. And CDs, you might be familiar with that, right? They have an interest rate that vary based on the term or length of the CD that you're going to get. So if you take a longer CD, right, maybe You could get a 6-month CD, a 1-year CD, a 3-year CD, a 5-year CD. Well, that 5-year CD is typically going to offer you a lot higher rate, right? Because you're committing your money, you're committing your cash to them for a much longer time. It's going to give you a higher rate than the 6-month CD. But here's the thing to think about. Right now, interest rates are on the rise. So tying your money up for 5 years, while you might get a better rate today, within 1 year, short-term rates might be higher than what they're giving you for that 5-year CD. And then you'd have to break your term, and depending on what the penalties are for cashing out early, you might not get that interest. So when it comes to CDs, I would kind of focus more on that shorter term, that 6 months to 1 year. Main reason behind that is because it appears that interest rates are going to continue to go up. So if you get yourself locked into something longer term, it may not pay benefit because those short-term interest rates might then overtake it within that period of that longer term that you would have taken. Also, another thing to think about when it comes to CDs is that if this is truly your emergency fund and you need it, again, not wrong to put it into a CD, but you want to make sure that you understand any penalties or lack of interest that you would receive if you had to take that money out before the term was up. Okay, here we go. The third area to go with cash, to keep your money working for you. You may have seen some of this in the news. They're called I bonds, Series I savings bonds. These are issued actually by the U.S. government. And currently, according to the article here, they're at an initial rate of 7.12%. So that sounds pretty great, right? 7.12% on my cash? I mean, it's way better than anything else that I've been talking about on the podcast so far. However, let me walk you through the pros and the cons of these Series I savings bonds. Here we go. The pros. First off, issued by the U.S. government. So a lot safer, right? Because you are backed now by the U.S. government. Another positive, as I mentioned, and according to the article here, the current initial rate is 7.12%. It's pretty good. Another pro here is that the interest rates are subject to change every 6 months. Now you're going to see I'm going to put that in on the downsides as well. But, hey, if due to inflation and due to interest rates, due to the consumer price index, you might see that over 6 months that the interest rate could actually go up. Another thing on the positive side here, the income that you get from these savings bonds grows tax deferred. And also the income is tax-free from a state and local level. Now, you are going to have to pay federal income tax on it, but it's tax-free from a state and local level. So there's the, if you're kind of doing your side-by-side comparison here, should you put some cash into the Series I savings bonds, there's the positive sides. Now, let's talk about some of the downsides. First off, you can't cash out any of the money in the first year. So you really need to think about that. If any of this is truly emergency fund or truly cash that you're going to need in 1 year or less, this might not be the right tool for you. If you take the money out before 5 years, you're going to lose the most recent 3 months of interest. So they're actually asking you, if you want to kind of compare it to a CD, again, it's not a CD, but if you want to kind of compare it, they're asking you to commit to a 5-year term. And if you cash out before that 5 years, you're not going to lose all of the interest. You're just going to lose the most recent 3 months. And then here's as I said, this was on the upsides, but also on the downsides, is that the interest rates are subject to change every 6 months. So while you're starting out with 7.12% interest rate, they're asking you to commit for 5 years, but after that first 6 months, they have the ability to change that interest rate. Could go up, could go down. It's based on inflation and it's based on the consumer price index. So just because it shows 7.12% doesn't mean that's exactly what you're going to get for the lifetime of the money that you've put there. Now, if you've got a healthy amount of cash sitting in your, savings account or your online savings account, maybe you're moving some over there now, right? And then maybe you've got some sitting in some short-term CDs. Well, maybe this is, if you've got, again, more cash and you just don't feel comfortable putting that cash into that. You've done your review. You know what makes the most sense for you. You don't feel comfortable putting it into the market, right? Maybe it's some surplus over your 6-month emergency fund needs. Well, then maybe the Series I savings bonds here, they call them the I bonds. Maybe these are an area for you to look at. Just to know, you can only purchase up to $10,000 per person per calendar year. Folks, hopefully that was helpful to you in regards to areas where you can put your cash. Again, I realize nothing there was, out of this world when it comes to interest, and that's why I really say to concentrate on, and hopefully you're seeing it now, as inflation continues to rise. That's why it's really important not to have too much cash on hand. You need to have cash on hand. It's part of a good, healthy financial plan to have cash on hand for those emergencies, for those big ticket items that you're going to purchase in the next 1 to 3 years. But as you see here, you're not going to make a whole lot on it. And so it's also important not to have too much cash on hand, because as we see inflation rates currently at 7%, we need money working a lot harder for us to help our money keep up with inflation and hopefully and potentially outpace inflation. But for that money that you do have in cash, hopefully these are some good areas to get it working for you versus just having it work for somebody else. I really hope that you found today's episode to be of value and benefit. And if so, and you'd like to listen to additional podcasts just like this to help you build wealth and reduce your long-term tax picture, subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Also, I'd really appreciate if you found this to be of value, you found it to be of benefit, and you want to help other people find this podcast, leave us a review. It'd mean a lot to me. Folks, also check us out on lifemoneyshow.com. Again, that's lifemoneyshow.com to see additional podcasts, to read additional blogs. Plus, we have videos on there, all to help you in your financial future. I really look forward to our next conversation, again, to help you continue to live life today and be financially confident about your tomorrow.
Sierens Financial Group is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Sierens Financial Group, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Sierens Financial Group, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Sierens Financial Group, Inc.